Welcome in. It is the Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Whitmire, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. However you get your podcast, we appreciate you tuning in. Maybe it's our YouTube channel. Maybe it's via our website, Northside Baseball, or via Apple Podcasts, or an array of other different options you have. We always appreciate it. Jason, good to have you back on. For those viewing the video version of this, you can see the topics to the right of the screen. I always say for those that aren't watching the video version, it's more of a surprise. That's never a bad thing. I thought we'd start in more of a fun manner before we dive into some of the nitty gritty with the minor league reports, some numbers on Ryan Presley, things of that nature. We have early all-star results being fed back to us on Monday. We are recording this Tuesday for a Wednesday publish as the Cubs get ready for the Brewers. This is, of course, before game one of that series between Chicago and Milwaukee. So we have early all-star results. PCA, Kyle Tucker, 1-2 in the outfield for the National League. Carson Kelly, second among catchers. I thought that was pretty cool.
The first thing I had written down.
Yeah, the one that irks me, and then I'll let you cover the bases however you want to, Jason. The one that irks me is Seiya Suzuki. To me, is just like the year he's having. Like, he is an all-star. Like, he is absolutely an all-star, but, the Rafael Devers trade to San Francisco doesn't help his cause because Devers is a designated hitter. Seiya Suzuki falls into the category of designated hitter, and those early results show Suzuki behind Ohtani as expected, and Devers when it comes to DHs, Suzuki falling third in line. And then the last note I had on the first little part of this before we dive in more to it, PCA with the third most votes of any player in the National League behind just Ohtani and Freddie Freeman, both of the Los Angeles Dodgers. What caught your attention? What stood out? Obviously, it sounds like Carson Kelly being second among catchers kind of took the cake for you.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down. I just wrote down Carson Kelly second. Who'd have thought? Because I think if you had said in the beginning of the season that Carson Kelly was going to be the second leading vote getter at catcher and deserve it, like, I mean, at this point, like, it's kind of hard to say that he doesn't deserve some recognition for what he's been doing this season. I know he's kind of in a slump right now, but I think the first part of the season was so good that you would have been considered crazy. That would have been a dumb thing to bank your buck on. And he's looking good to maybe make an all-star game. I agree. Suzuki third is the second thing I wrote down. Kind of, I guess, bad news with the trade is that kind of bumps Devers into that second spot in the National League. I guess, and I don't want to throw any shade against Giants fans, but I don't think Giants fans vote like Red Sox fans. So I guess maybe moving forward, Seiya Suzuki can make up some ground, although I think it's like 400,000.
It is. Yeah, it's a big gap.
Yeah, it's probably too big of a gap for him to get voted in, but there's a lot of the manager choice past the starting options. So I don't think he was ever going to beat out Ohtani to be the starter. So I think that he'll get there. The biggest kind of snub that I saw was Nico Horner being in third. He's behind Marte, who's been hurt a bunch this year. And I don't, and what was it? Oh, Tommy Edman. And I know Edman's he started off the season really good, but he hasn't played necessarily like second base all the time. He's played some center field and everything like that. And Nico is actually the second leading FWAR in second base, behind Brendan Donovan. You want to talk about a snub right there. Brendan Donovan being down in the fourth spot. That's actually a massive snub. And I don't like to give Cardinals fans or Cardinals a lot of credit, but Donovan should right now be your starting second baseman. But Nico Horner probably deserves better than third. I know that, there's no voting for starting pitching, but I kind of wonder if Matthew Boyd is a little bit of a dark horse to maybe make the All-Star game. He's 18th right now in ERA league-wide. He's got 1.5 FWAR in the season. He's a lefty. You can maybe sneak that in there, which, again, I don't know if he's going to get there or if he's not going to get there. But the fact that we can talk about Matthew Boyd as, like, even being in that kind of, like, vicinity, I think it's crazy because when they first signed Matthew Boyd, I had reservations. I took a step back once I kind of started to think about it a little bit more and kind of maybe understand it, and that maybe the Tommy John surgery would kind of fix a lot of the things and how good he had been with Cleveland. But But still, Boyd's been better than I think anybody could have realistically suggested too. So, when we're looking at that all-star voting, you're talking Carson Kelly, you're talking Matthew Boyd, as even a kind of a backdoor potential. And, I think these were some of the, at least with some of the people that I know, people were upset that we didn't sign Danny Jansen at catcher instead of Carson Kelly. People were upset that we signed Matthew Boyd as kind of like the big starting pitcher addition. And, these are two guys that, I think, could maybe sneak their way into all-star game appearances. And, even if they don't keep it up, and even if Carson Kelly isn't going to hit like Babe Ruth for, more than a month on the season, the fact that they're getting that out of these guys, I think kind of lets the back end kind of analytical models that the Cubs are using and who they're bringing in and how they're kind of tweaking these guys. And that makes me feel good. It kind of points to maybe how good the season's gone from a Cubs perspective that we're having this conversation because, like I said, I think in January or February, if you said that two of the guys that we'd be talking about on the All-Star earlier votes are Carson Kelly and, I know not voting, but still bringing him up, Matthew Boyd, I think you'd think we were pretty crazy. And here we are doing it. And I don't think we sound that crazy right now.
No, not at all. The Nico Horner element that you brought up, it is a shame, but that's where the this part of the voting, a lot of it does come down to a popularity contest. I mean, the Dodgers are good, Dodgers are great, but there are Dodgers players littered in the top two of all these positions. Ohtani leading DHs, rightfully so. Mookie Betts second for shortstops. Max Muncy second for third baseman, Edmonds second for second baseman, Freddie Freeman leading first baseman in the voting, and Will Smith leading the catchers in voting. So a lot of it comes down to popularity. I saw the Rockies were trying to pump up Hunter Goodman, their own catcher's campaign. He's currently fifth in the National League, not too far behind Francisco Alvarez of the Mets, who's in third. And they're trying to get his campaign going a little bit, which is always fun. That's kind of the fun element of this. But you do talk about a guy like Nico Horner who probably deserves more love than what he's getting. He's been sensational. I don't know if it was last week with True Blood or 2 weeks ago with you, brought up Nico Horner and just like the underrated season he is having. I think it was with you.
I think it was because
the impact Nico Horner has, because we were saying like PCA gets a lot of the spotlight, rightfully so. Kyle Tucker gets a lot of it, rightfully so. The season Seiya Suzuki's having, rightfully so. Nico Horner, you can make a case he's the engine for this lineup for the Cubs. He's just so consistent with what he does, and he's a bit of a throwback. I had wrote an article a couple weeks ago because he doesn't have the power numbers. He doesn't.
Nice.
He's not smashing the ball. Yeah, he's not barreling it up like crazy. Like he maximizes his strengths to the absolute top level, which is so fun to see. So would like to see Nico Horner certainly get some more love. That'd be kind of cool. And then you bring up Matthew Boyd. That would be awesome. Carson Kelly too being second. I don't like what happened with Cubs catching in the last calendar year, Jason, because last year with Amaya and Gomes, and I know Amaya's on the shelf right now, but he had a pretty damn good start to the season compared to what he did last year. And I know he came on a little bit late in 2024, but last year that was a dark hole at catcher offensively for the Cubs. Now we're seeing Reese McGuire look more than competent when his numbers called upon. To not only defensively, I'm saying as a catcher, but I'm talking about in the batter's box at the dish, and it's been a complete
all right.
It's been a complete 180 at the catcher position. I know Carson Kelly had that scorching hot start, and he has since cooled off. But overall, just the production they're getting offensively at catcher has been a complete 180 to what we saw last year, and that's being reflected somewhat in this voting when you see Carson Kelly second among all catchers in the National League.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can kind of point to is maybe how the Cubs are handling hitting, just kind of organizationally. I'm going to bring up something else kind of in that mold when we talk about the minor league report. But, when you look at the team in general, Pete Crow-Armstrong has changed his swing for the better. Michael Busch has changed his swing for the better against right-handed pitching. Matt Trueblood wrote a great article about why maybe we should not want to see him against left-handed pitching that often, which is probably fair. Looking at the numbers, they bear that out. But Carson Kelly made some offensive mechanical changes. Miguel Amaya made some mechanical changes. Matt Shaw's made mechanical changes, and all of these things have been for the better as we go through it. So one thing that I think we're we should maybe not expect, fully every single little bit, but start to kind of look for is how the Cubs are going to take hitters and maximize what they do well and how they're going to make them better. So, I think it's one of the things that I'm taking away with the catcher position, with and just kind of like organizationally, like overall, I think they do a pretty good job of analytically figuring out how to make these hitters the best that they can under the hood, and we're seeing that pay off. I haven't really done any legwork into Reese McGuire, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were slight under the hood tweaks that the Cubs have been working with in Iowa as to why this is kind of paying off a little bit for him as well. So I think that's pretty cool that they're managing to do that. I know Fangraphs wrote a great article. The catching hitting was like up league wide this year. It's like it's like the year of the catcher, man. Just like kind of looking at the pages. So it does seem like catchers are hitting a little bit better league wide this year. But I also don't think that that's necessarily taking away anything from the Cubs are doing under the hood, because Amaya and Kelly have both made mechanical changes and for the better.
Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Whitmire, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. This has become a weekly segment, a big, important weekly segment within the podcast. I see you take a drink of your beverage there, your water, because you're getting this. This is your stage right here, Jason.
I'm excited.
With the minor league report, and I will note, I saw there was a combined no-no in Knoxville with your boy Jackson Wiggins spearheading it. I think he went 5 2/3. It said. I'll
5 2/3. Yeah.
I'll let you take it over. But for those who have been listening to our podcast, Jackson Wiggins is a guy you routinely bring up as someone who is delivering down in the minors for the Cubs. So to see him be part of a combined no-no for the Tennessee Smokies, pretty damn cool. Let's get to the minor league report, Jason.
Cool. We're gonna have a little bit of a theme today. Today's theme is pitching. I just kind of looking over the report and some of the things that I thought that we should probably highlight, and it's all pitchers today and one hitter, and not the hitter that you think it is. I do want to start with Jackson. He was the guy I wanted to start with. He was the starter in that game that started the no-no. The thing that I kind of want to point out the most is when we're talking, I kind of talked about it with hitting, but with pitching right now, there's been an organizational philosophy shift this year. And I think a lot of that comes from Tyler Zombro. If you're unaware of Tyler Zombro is the lead director at Tread Athletics. You can think of them kind of like Kyle Boddy and like Driveline and everything like that. They work with a lot of pitchers, and you can see his fingers in the way that the Cubs are organizationally changing things. I think a lot of credit has been given to him and Jameson Taillon's kick change this year. His change up that has really kind of helped him be a better pitcher this year. But I think that these things are things that we can see in the minors as well. And we can see that with Jackson Wiggins. Wiggins went 90 pitches yesterday or the other day. And that's big because pitchers before last year, and this is under Dan Kantrovitz, this is under Craig Breslow. These are guys who have either been with the organization for a while or recently left or whatever. In the case of Breslow's, but they limited their pitchers in innings and pitch count, and this year we're not seeing that so much. Wiggins went a career high 90 pitches. He did walk 3, but 2 of those came in that last frame when you could see he was kind of gassing out. But the Cubs were still pushing him to that 90 pitch limit. When Jordan Wicks, for example, when he came up to the majors a couple of summers ago, he hadn't gone more than 5 innings ever in the minors. And he was coming out of college. He never went more than 5. He was a 5-inning guy in Iowa. They bring him up. He's going 6 in the pros, but he's going 5 in Iowa. This year, we're seeing Jackson Wiggins go 90 pitches, 5 2/3. He's gone 7 before this year. So we're seeing a bit of a philosophy change. He struck out 9 in that game. He looked nasty. He's ringing that fastball up to 97, 98. If he can continue to work on that slider, there's a guy there. And I've said it before. I think I said it very early in the year in an article. Do not be surprised if Jackson Wiggins throws a couple of pitches for the major league team out of the bullpen this year. I think if the right injuries hit at the right time, Wiggins is a guy who could take a role late in the season. I wouldn't expect it, but I would say it's not impossible. Second name I want to bring up, keeping the pitching and kind of the philosophy change, is Ryan Gallagher. Brought him up a couple of weeks ago. I want to hit him again because he not only went another 5 2/3, struck out another 8, walked only one, gave up 1 run, but he went 100 pitches in the minor leagues.
Wow.
So again, we're seeing this philosophical change, and Ryan Gallagher, I think, is somebody to really pay attention to. He's improved his fastball from that like 88 to 90 range, sits about 93 now. If he can sit 93 with his secondary offerings, there's a guy there. I don't know if it's necessarily like top of the rotation kind of guy, but the sheer fact that they're getting a mid-round pick to be talking about some potential MLB stuff, keep an eye on him. Grant Kipp is another one. He's been in the system for a couple of years. He's had a really good slider, but he's seen some improvement with the fastball this year. He went 5 1/3. His last one, struck out 8, walked 2. On the season, he's striking out about 1 out of every 3 hitters. Really great story. He's an Ivy League kid, so it's always fun to see the Ivy Leaguers come out. Little skeptical on his starting potential. I think maybe he's like more as we get into it, I think maybe his like real space is like right-handed pitcher against right-handed hitter out of like mid-inning relief. But if he's going to go 5 1/3, struck out 8, still got to kind of let him keep going on the starting pitching mound.
Yeah.
Kind of focus now in on Iowa pitching because the guys in Iowa who we get a lot of credit for. We talk a lot about Moises Ballesteros. We talk about Johnny Long. We talk about Christian Franklin, but we haven't talked a lot about their bullpen. And I'm not necessarily certain that a lot of these guys are going to get a second chance this year. But when we look at the Cubs bullpen as it is right now, Ryan Presley, he's a free agent next year. Drew Pomeranz, he's a free agent next year. Caleb Thielbar, he's a free agent next year. Brad Keller, he's a free agent next year. There's going to be turnover in the Cubs bullpen. The Cubs do not really give a lot of long-term money to the bullpen. So I think previewing what the future in the bullpen looks like is we can see that a little bit in Iowa right now. My favorite story in the minor leagues, bar none, is Riley Martin. And I like to bring up Riley Martin as much as possible because one of the things I very much believe in when we talk about minor leagues is, you celebrate your wins, and I'm going to celebrate a big win of mine later. But you have to recognize your losses. And Riley Martin was a mid-round pick handful of years ago. He's 27 now. He's been in the system for a while. But I remember when he got drafted, and this is kind of before the rules shifted. If you're not super familiar with the way that the draft works, is guys get drafted in rounds, and there's a slot value attached to it. Basically, a suggestion of how much you should pay these guys. They've tweaked the rules a little bit. Recently, they tweaked the rules because of things like Riley Martin, and now you have to offer kind of X percentage of that money to the guy, or there's some potential fallbacks and things that could come back at you. But when Riley Martin signed, the Cubs signed him. They drafted him out of Quincy, Illinois, which is a 1,500-person liberal arts school outside of Chicago. We're not talking D1. We're not talking D2. We're talking tiny school. And they signed him for $1,000 as a mid-round pick. They saved all of that money for other guys in the draft. And basically, it was kind of they took him, I think, in large part because it was like, listen, who's going to sign for $1,000? Well, probably the lefty throwing 89 miles an hour out of Quincy. This is his one chance at being a professional major leaguer. He'd be an undrafted free agent without it. And they signed him. And I remember on that draft, I kind of laughed it off like, oh, probably never talk about this kid again. He's added some to the fastball. He's sitting in like the low 90s, like 92, 93. He is 27. So, kind of take that with a grain of salt. But over his last 14 innings, he struck out 40% of the hitters he's faced.
Wow.
He has a phenomenal curveball, and the big changes. He's always had strikeout rate. He stopped walking people. If Thielbar or Pomeranz goes down or like really like tanks, Martin is a guy who's going to pitch major league innings at some point in his career. I'm not entirely certain it's going to be with the Cubs. If I was a team at the deadline and I'm making a bigger trade with the Cubs and I can just like throw in a guy, Riley Martin's probably the guy I'm throwing in. I'm asking for. I find him very interesting. But don't be surprised if he doesn't pitch innings, if he pitches innings in Chicago, or if he's not maybe like gets a role with the Cubs next year at the age of 28. One of my favorite stories because I counted him out right away. So I love Riley Martin. I love being wrong. I think a lot of people are afraid to be wrong, and I love it, man. If I shit on you coming out of the draft right away as a $1,000 signing, and then all you do is strike people out and show me that I'm wrong. I love being wrong. Like make me wrong, man. And I just think he's a great story. I hope he makes the major leagues at some point. I hope it's with the Cubs. Just really, really cool story. A couple other guys I'll hit from the Iowa list. Jack Neely, who started off the season really rough. Cubs acquired him in a trade at the deadline last year for Mark Leiter. We saw him a little bit in Chicago at the end of last year. Struggled a little bit in his very brief stint. And then in Iowa this year, it started off the season, couldn't find the strike zone. Seems to have figured it out. Dropped his walk rate below 8% over his last 13 innings. He struck out 37% of hitters over that time. ERA is about 2. So he's a guy who I think maybe we don't see him this year, but we see him next year. Luke Little, who I know had his one bad outing with the Cubs, but he's been great this year in Iowa. He's down to a 10% walk rate. He's striking out 1 out of every 3 hitters. That's another lefty. I think if he's not in the pen this year, he's in the pen next year. This is a guy that I'd keep walking out on. And then Will Sanders, I've talked about him a little bit. We're starting to get some StatCast data on him. It's not super pretty. When you're looking at it, he's not doing he's not great at throwing a ton of strikes. He throws good amount of strikes. It's like 62 percentile in terms of strike throwing, which is good, but not great. He's getting like 40s, 50s in a lot of the range, like 40th, 50th percentile. But he's learning at the AAA level, so I'm kind of willing to let that play out. But he went 5 2/3, struck out 7, walked 2 last week. Another guy who's just kind of making his rounds. So I really like where the pitching's going in the system. I know at the end of this year, we're going to look at the minor league system as the Cubs. It's going to take a big tumble in the rankings. And part of that's going to be the Cubs are going to trade some guys. The Cubs are going to promote some guys. Cade Horton's not going to be a rookie anymore. Matt Shaw's not going to be a rookie anymore. It's hard to maintain, being a top 7 minor league system when you promote 2 top 30 prospects and you trade another couple top 100 guys. It's pretty hard. At the same time, I'm really encouraged with the pitching and where it's going. I think the Cubs are doing a really good job and an interesting job of developing some arms. You've got, that real high end Jackson Wiggins. You've got some mid-round guys who are making some noise. And when we look back at, I think the Jason McLeod and Theo Epstein era. One of the big complaints about the Cubs minor league system is they didn't do 2 things. They didn't develop pitching, and they didn't develop a lot of players outside of the top round. And I think that's somewhat fair and maybe a little unfair as well. It's a lot easier to develop top 10 picks, and they had a bunch of them.
Yeah, that's why they're taking the top 10, right?
Right, that's why they're taking in the top 10. At the same time, pitching is kind of a random gamble in some ways. Guys get hurt, weird things happen there. At the same time, they drafted Dylan Cease and they traded him. So it's not like they couldn't find, and they didn't take him in the top 2 rounds either. So that's a pitcher taking the top 2 rounds. So I don't think it was always as fair as maybe some people said, but you look at the system right now, Jackson Wiggins, 2nd round pick. A lot of people maligned that. They didn't like the data coming out of Arkansas. He never really had a good run at Arkansas. He got hurt, headed into his junior year, had Tommy John. We never really saw him in his big breakout year. The Cubs liked what they saw regardless, took him. He's doing great. Ryan Gallagher, mid-round pick. He's doing great. Grant Kipp, mid-round pick, doing great. Riley Martin, mid-round pick. They're developing him, doing great. Luke Little, mid-round pick, doing great. So I think we're starting to see some of that change. One other guy I want to highlight on minor league report today is Owen Casey. I haven't gotten to talk a lot about Owen Casey. And as much as, like I said, I like to find my losses, but I like to celebrate my wins. I liked Owen Casey back in the 2020 draft. And the Cubs didn't take him, and I was bummed out about that. I liked him going into that. As a 2nd round pick, he was a monster out of Canada. And in that kind of weird COVID draft, give me tools. And he was drafted by the Padres in the 2nd round. Got over slot, and then the Cubs traded for him, and he is awesome. So I love Owen Casey. I love that they traded for him. I've been super jazzed about it. This year, the strikeout rate has gone up. I don't think anybody will tell you otherwise. He's definitely striking out over 30% of the time. right now, and that is a little bit of an issue. I don't think that's necessarily exactly where we wanted to see, but I also think that comes with the addition of power and launch. One of the things, he wasn't always super great at doing, despite the size, was pulling the ball, launching the ball in the air, and hitting a lot of home runs. And we're starting to see that out of him. Over his last 85 plate appearances in Iowa, he's 58% better than league average. That's a 158 WRC plus. Iowa's the easy place to hit, generally speaking. So even when we talk about that 158 OPS or WRC plus, we're talking about a stat line that comes with that is ridiculously good. And I do want to kind of highlight that just so that people understand how good he's been over that time. It's a 315 average, it's a 408 on base percentage, and a 573 slugging percentage. And this is somebody who is 22 years old. He's 22. We're talking about a 22-year-old who's basically 60% better over his last 85 plate appearances in Iowa. He's been pretty good on the season. The season numbers are a 126 WRC plus, but I think he's really starting to kind of slide into it. And we've seen him do this over the seasons, where he kind of struggles at the beginning of it and then takes it on late. He's made a couple good plays in the outfield. A lot of people like to kind of like knock his defense, but one of the reasons I liked him way back in 2020 is his athleticism. He's a big guy, but he moves a little bit better than people give him credit for. He's got a really good arm. Definitely a 60 grade arm. So that's a plus arm. He can play left field. He threw out a runner at home plate playing left field the other day. I think he can play in right field. He's definitely got the arm for it. So that's kind of my one hitter I really wanted to highlight this week. But I kind of, theme of the week is definitely the pitching in the minor leagues. I like the development. I like where they're going. And I wouldn't be surprised. I don't want to make any like predictions or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if over the next handful of years, with Tyler Zombro, with some of the philosophies that people like Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins, who's coming in from the Cleveland system, have. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe pitching is kind of a big theme with the Cubs and what they're able to develop. So I'm encouraged. I'm excited about it. And I think if you were somebody who was kind of worried about the Cubs, 5 years ago, developing pitching and developing non-first round starters, players, I think you should be really excited about what we have coming soon. There's a lot of guys to get excited about, kind of up and down the system at different ceilings. So I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited about that pitching, because I know it's a little different than what we're used to.
It is the Northside Baseball Podcast. Mitch Whitmire, Jason Ross with you, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. Theme of your minor league report circulated around pitching. Theme of this podcast, the next two segments, will also circulate around pitching. I want to look at the bullpen. I want to look at one guy in the bullpen right now, Jason, Ryan Pressly. And I'm just going to ask the question, is Ryan Pressly back? I'm looking around and I'm watching him come into the ninth inning and scoop up a save against the Pirates last week. And some might say, oh, it's Pittsburgh. Their offense is horrendous, blah, blah, blah. Pressly in the last, month or so has been put in fluff spots. Middle innings, Cubs up big. Very rare are there occasions where the Cubs have been down big, but he has not been put in high leverage situations. The last week and a half, 2 weeks, that has tilted slightly. We've seen him in bigger situations, maybe a seventh or eighth inning where the Cubs are up 1 or 2 runs. Then he gets that save opportunity and nails it home against the Pirates. The strikeout percentage is starting to rise. It couldn't have gotten much worse than what it was, a few weeks ago, but it is starting to rise. Walk rate is dropping. And I know you specifically, and we can get into it, you believe the fastball has a lot to do with this, correct? With Ryan Pressly specifically.
Yeah, fastball is much better. If we look just kind of at his last few outings, so if we go back kind of like through June, he's added about a mile per hour on his fastball. I think it's a small tweaks, very small tweaks. I wrote an article about it over the weekend. He's slightly adjusted his vertical release point on the fastball. I kind of all of his pitches, just in general. There's a slight change in the vertical release point. His arm angle is still at the same place, but where he's releasing it is just slightly a little bit higher, and it seems to have added a little velocity. And we can see that because, if we look at his last 6 outings and we compare his velocity over his last 6 to where it's been on the season, we see about a full mile per hour addition. So he's averaging 93.8 miles per hour on his fastball right now over those last 6, and he was averaging about 93 before that. So that's a full, rounding error up, full mile per hour above that. He's also getting more ride on his fastball, so that's more kind of backspin on it. It's not gonna sink as much. It's not gonna drop as much, and he's getting less arm side run. He was getting a lot of what seemed like a cutter kind of action, kind of tailing back into hitters, and we're seeing less of that now. I think that shape helps him. His fastball with a ride, it plays better up. And, even just looking at his last outing, where did all 4 fastballs he threw? Up, upper third. So I think the fastball shape is a little bit better. I think the fastball velocity is a little bit better. And sometimes small little tweaks like that, it doesn't have to be a huge tweak, but small little tweaks like that can result in big things. He's throwing more strikes. He's not walking guys out. There have been some times when he's gotten to play against the Pirates and things like that, but he also averaged, 95 miles an hour in an outing against the Phillies, in which he struck out a couple of guys. And, the Phillies are a good team. They have good hitters. And I don't want to fully take away the idea that he's only capable of performing against the Phillies. He's seeing more high leverage situations. I think he's earned it. I think this is kind of the guy you would have thought when you traded for him. Does that mean he has to be the unquestioned closer? No. But I do think that means that, hey, if it's the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning and it's close and you want to kind of shuffle things around in one way, could Ryan Pressly be a part of that equation? I think absolutely. And he's definitely back in my circle of trust. He's back in the trust tree for me. I don't know how you feel about that, Mitch, if he's kind of earned that for you. But I think, we've gotten to the point where it's about like 15, 16 innings now since his blow up. He hasn't given up a run. The strikeout rate's sitting at about like 22, 23%. The walk rate's sitting at about 5% during that time. He's got trust tree back for me. So yeah, I don't know how you feel about that.
I'm close. I'm not fully into it yet. When you talk trust tree with Ryan Pressly, I want to be. Really, when you zoom out the microscope with this bullpen, where are you at as a whole with the group? Because I have noticed in Cubs social media circles, primarily X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, the bullpen is starting to get more and more attention from Cubs fans as a productive group, as a group that people are starting to trust as a whole more and more. And Drew Pomerantz hasn't allowed a run, and he's appeared in, like, the sample size is growing larger and larger with Pomerantz. I don't think Chris Flexen has allowed a run with the Cubs yet. Palencia has been awesome. Thielbar, was at times just, I don't want to be too harsh, but he was atrocious at times with the Twins last year. And this year it's like a resurgent year for Caleb Thielbar. And I know you've talked about him plenty of times on this podcast.
Number one fan right here.
Yeah, Brad Keller's been sensational, and Keller's been sensational from the rip this year with the Cubs. A lot of these guys are, not necessarily the names you would expect to be contributing to what at this point could be deemed, hey, a pretty, strong bullpen this last, month and a half. Where are you at?
Since May 1st, they are leading the league in ERA by a long shot. Almost a full run since May 1st. And just to make sure that everybody knows that we're not just pulling ERA, they're tied for second in F4. So like both kind of old school ERA, they're looking really good, but also all of those processes underneath it look really good. They don't walk anybody. They're third lowest in walks over that time period. They do not give up home runs. I think that's the thing that they probably do the best. They're stingy, under 5% home run fly ball rate. They do not give up home runs, and we can look at a bunch of the guys, but they just limit barrels. They just limit the hell out of barrels. So where Ryan Pressly kind of fits in the trust tree, I think I'm up for debate on that.
Yeah.
But right now, almost everybody's in the trust tree.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's what I was getting
crazy.
at. Yeah.
We were going to talk about it with the Cubs, Cup pitching wins the weekend. But again, celebrate your wins, but acknowledge your losses. I wrote a pretty scathing blue sky tweet on when they called up Chris Flexen. Basically that he wasn't going to last. Chris Flexen has shown me that I didn't know what I was talking about. Chris Flexen's awesome. I don't necessarily think he's going to stay as like awesome, but he's limiting barrels. They changed his arm angle. It's changed his slider. His slider's good now, which he used to not have any good pitches, and now he has a really good slider. Again, talking about that Cubs pitching development. There is real development going on. And, I don't want to take away Tommy Hotovoy either. Hotovey's been here for a while. He's been a good thing, but I think the combination of Zombro and Hotovey has gotten guys like Ryan Presley back into the game, has found, guys like Chris Flexen, but the bullpen's really good right now. And I think we're also kind of working our way out of this, like, well, it was just because of May and they played nobody during May. Well, yeah, but now they've been playing really good teams. They've been playing the Tigers. They've been playing the Phillies. They've got the Brewers coming up. They've got good teams on the schedule, and they're still not giving up runs. The bullpen still looks really good. So it's been fun to have a really good bullpen. Kind of shortens games up. I don't think Ryan Presley's he's probably not the only guy that we should really give a lot of props to on that. But I do think I like to give props where they do. He's pitched really well.
Yeah, I will say, too, I don't know how you feel about this. I am firmly in the camp still that I believe the Cubs need to add to the bullpen at the trade deadline. Yeah. I don't think this amazing stretch that has been for the bullpen, I can't imagine pivots Jed Hoyer off the mindset of we need to add an arm, at least an arm, maybe two, to the bullpen. I also think, and we'll get to this with, the Cubs-Brewers series and what lies ahead, but you're going to start getting reinforcements in the form of Shota Imanaga. And if you're not going with a 6-man rotation, someone could get knocked down. Like, could we see Colin Ray end up back in the bullpen? Like, you could get reinforcements in a variety of different ways if you're the Cubs. But I do think they should, and I would imagine they are, Jason, still focused on adding in some form or fashion at the deadline to the bullpen.
I'm not quite certain that they are going to prioritize the bullpen. I don't think that they're not going to prioritize it. At first, my first thought was, yeah, of course. And then I thought about it for a minute. And I don't think that they necessarily have to. I think they can. If the way I would approach the deadline, and this is just me, but I would make sure that whatever I acquired at the deadline, I had one impact arm. Whether that's a starting pitcher or a relief pitcher, I think it's perfectly fine either way. Either way would be fine. But I think the bullpen right now is in a good space. Now that can change with injuries pretty quickly. But if you look at the bullpen now, the Cubs are going to have a problem very shortly. And that's because Shota Imanaga needs to come back up and Porter Hodge is going to be back.
Yeah.
And both of those guys need to be in the major league roster. Both of those guys are very good pitchers. The question then is, how do you solve that problem? Because two players in the bullpen two players in the pitching area need to go. I think the easy one out is probably Genesis Cabrera, not because he's been bad, but because I think in pecking order of lefties, you've probably got two guys above him. When you look in the minors, there's other lefties. I don't think Genesis Cabrera is maybe long for the Cubs when that happens. But then who's the other?
Yeah.
Who's the other who goes? And I have a sneaking suspicion that the answer will be Ben Brown will be sent to Iowa. Not because he's been bad. I know he's had some rocky starts every once in a while. But if you look at a lot of the underlying numbers, they're pretty good. But he needs to limit his innings at some point. And a trip to Iowa, and subsequently wouldn't be surprised if they use the developmental list down there, which is a cool way to put somebody kind of on a timeout for a little bit. They will maybe frame it as him going down to work on his changeup. And you can get those two guys up without losing more than Genesis. But I mean, when you really look at the bullpen, I don't think that there's many spaces for them. And as we go further, Ben Brown and Cade Horton, Jackson Wiggins even, those are 3 power right-handed arms that can be added to the bullpen come October. And I don't think you're in a bad place at that point. I think if you add one more impact relief arm, it has to be impact. If you add
100%,
one,
not just a filler.
Right, you add an impact relief arm, you could maybe get away with going with like an Andrew Haney starting pitcher at the deadline. I know we all want like really great starting pitching when
Chris
it comes,
Sale.
right? Chris Sale, listen, Chris Sale would be the impact arm, right? I think the Cubs need one impact arm, and if it's an impact starter, then I think the bullpen's fine. I really do. I think the bullpen's perfectly fine for the playoffs. You move Cade Horton and Ben Brown there. You put Chris Flexen or Colin Ray. One of them gets bumped off the roster. Everything's fine for the playoffs. It's good to go. You have your 4 starters. I think the opposite way is you leave Shota, you leave Boyd, and you leave Tyone as your 3 starters. But if you add an impact reliever, you go with the Dodgers bullpen plan last year, which was basically like they had like 2 starting pitchers, one of which was Walker Buehler, and then they just kind of killed you with their bullpen.
Yep.
They just murdered you with their bullpen. And I think if you're the Cubs, you've got Cade Horton, you've got Ben Brown, you've got Brad Keller, you've got who can all go multiple innings at that point out of the bullpen. And if you add another impact arm there, I think you really can kind of do what you want. So I don't think it has to be bullpen. I think it can be bullpen. And this deadline is going to be kind of weird because the options available are going to be kind of funky. You know, if the Cubs can't get Chris Sale off the Braves and the Braves don't want to make that happen, and you go with like a David Bednar instead, I think that works. I think you go with the David Bednar as kind of like that impact reliever. He's had a really good season with Pittsburgh. I know, he kind of gave up the hit to Ian Happ the other day with the Manfred runner on second, which I don't necessarily blame him for. That's always kind of tough. But he's looked pretty good this year. Bednar could be somebody that you could pick up, but I think it's kind of one or the other. I think they have to pick up a starter no matter what because they need to save innings from Horton and Brown at some point. And they got to have somebody to do it. But I think the impact can be bullpen or starting. I don't know how you feel about that. I know it's kind of changing kind of what we were talking about. But it just kind of felt like an organic thing to maybe bring up. And I don't know how you like if you kind of how you feel about that.
Yeah, I'm fine because I know. I mean, I can't say I know for 100% certainty, but I would be stunned if the trade deadline comes and goes and the Cubs don't add either a starter or a bullpen arm, perhaps one of each, who knows. But like, I can't imagine there's a world that exists where the deadline comes and goes and the Cubs don't do anything with the pitching staff, so or the bullpen. So we'll see. That gives me my peace of mind, if you will, knowing that I think they can address the rotation and maybe should. I think they can address the bullpen and maybe should with one more impact arm, as the phrasing you used, knowing that they're for sure going to do one of those things at least. Gives me the peace of mind that I want for a team that, I'm starting to think more and more about could make a run come October if they're able to take the NL Central crown. This kind of funnels into our next point. Cubs pitching wins the weekend. And I know Pittsburgh's offense isn't a world beater, right? Like they're not, but still an MLB offense. Cubs take 3 of 4 from them. The 3 wins against the Pirates, the final scores were 3-2, 2-1, and 3-2 again. Even the loss, Jason, was a 2-1 loss. Kind of running with what stood out from the pitching this weekend in that series against Pittsburgh for you. For me, the headliner, and we just talked about him and we just kind of fueled the point a little bit. For me, one of the headliners is Cade Horton. 5 2/3 didn't allow a run. That's all fine and dandy. But we kind of just talked about it. Shota Imanaga should be returning soon. There will have to be a move made. You mentioned Ben Brown as a candidate potentially. There will have to be a move made in the rotation unless they want to run with, a 6-man rotation. Who knows? Horton, to me, has to stay right now. Like, in my opinion, Horton has to stay. I don't believe he should even be brought up as a candidate that, hey, maybe we just, send him down for a little bit just because of the numbers game. Imanaga's come back up. Someone's got to go down. Maybe it should be Cade Horton. To me, especially with that start against Pittsburgh, I left that start saying he's got to stay. He has to stay, and he has to stay in the rotation for now. And then you figure something else out once Shota gets back. So that was one of my main takeaways. And as I was watching his start, they brought up on Marquee, Shota's rehab and how he's expected back soon. and all that. And that's when it dawned on me, Jason. It was during that start when they brought it up on Marquee. I was like, Cade's got to stay. So I hope that's the case. You watch him too, like the confidence is growing, the stuff is present. I don't see. You brought up Ben Brown. I see a benefit for both the Cubs and Ben Brown if Ben Brown's the guy that goes down once Shota comes back up. I can't wrap my mind around what the benefit would be for the Cubs or Cade Horton if Cade Horton is the casualty once Shota comes back up. So I hope the Cubs think along that same line, that there's no point to send Cade Horton down to have him be the guy once Shota comes back. To me, I think you want him in the rotation still for the long haul. And then, once playoffs roll around, you start to have those conversations, things of that nature. So that was my kind of takeaway. There were so many brilliant performances from Cubs arms in that series against Pittsburgh. I'm so high and so giddy on Cade Horton that when he goes out and he just shoves like that, it just really, it starts to make me think like, man, I think this guy could be like a really damn good number 2 in a rotation, maybe a 1, but like I love what I'm seeing from Cade Horton, and I hope when Shota comes back that he sticks around in the rotation. I think he should.
If you want to benefit from it, it's that there is going to be a limit on his innings at some point.
That's the tricky part. Yeah,
that's the tricky part. There's a limit on his innings, and at some point you're going to have to ask yourself, do I want the innings now or do I want the innings later? So if you want a benefit of it, that's the benefit. The one benefit that you can find from sending Cade Horton down is not from a developmental point of view or anything like that, because I think you've got a major league pitcher right now. It's pretty obvious. You can basically dive into everything that you look at, and he's a major league pitcher right now and a major league starter. And I think, like right now, he's like a real like major league like mid-rotation piece.
Yep.
I do think his ceiling is number 1. I think he's the number 1 starting pitcher when things kind of continue to slide in to him. So that's the one benefit. I do not think that he will be going down first, though. I do think Ben Brown will get the first time out.
Don't you think the timing should matter too? Because to me, I mentioned, I don't know if you're seeing it the same way. I'm seeing Cade Horton the last two of the last 3 outings, like the confidence is growing, like he's
getting
trusting himself. So why then would it be like, hey, we know we have to limit his innings at some point. Let's just get out in front of it and do it now. Like when he's finding a groove and a rhythm, that's when I say ride this wave of momentum every 5th day when Cade Horton's out there, instead of saying, let's limit the innings now. To me, as the season carries along, maybe he starts to show more fatigue and the innings start racking up. Then you have that discussion. I'm just seeing a pitcher who right now is climbing the ladder. So that's why I hope, I do see the benefit, because you're going to have to limit the innings at some point. I just don't want it to be now with how he's pitching. If he was struggling, and the confidence wasn't there, and then I think it's a different conversation, but that's just not the case right now with Cade.
No, I fully agree. I wouldn't send him down either. And the thing that I've really enjoyed, and I wrote an anatomy of an at bat on the website.
I read that was awesome, by the way.
Appreciate that. Thank you. It was my favorite at bat from that game, and I know it was like super like nothing. Is an at bat that you just don't think about, but his fastball placement has gotten better, and it was better again against the Pirates. He's got so much arm side or glove side run on that fastball. It's essentially a 4-seam cutter. It's a special pitch, and that he can get that up to 96 from the over the top arm angle that he has, and still have that cut away from a right-handed hitter. He's got to get that pitch on that outside third. He's got to get that pitch up if he's going to get it up, and he's got to get it in on lefties. And he's doing that more and more. He had a couple good pitches like that to O'Neal Cruz that kind of stood out again as another good one. A couple good fastballs to Spencer Horwitz, I think, if my mind's serving me correctly. But I thought the fastball placement's getting better and better. He's getting better and better. And as that fastball placement gets better and better, the whiff numbers are just going to go up and up. But I thought he's looked great so far. I'm actually going to save it for the Cubs-Brewers series part.
Okay.
But there's an interesting comparison there that I want to bring up, and why I think he's so good already And probably my favorite thing about the Cubs-Brewers series coming up is going to be this. So I'll save it for a few minutes. I'll build the tension. You got to stick with us for a few more minutes to figure out what I'm super excited about with the Cubs-Brewers series. But I took that away from the series. I wrote down Chris Flexen again.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Chris Flexen today. He's just looked good. He's been he's been a nice little arm on the mound, and one of the extra innings and the bullpen was tired that day. You could tell that there weren't maybe all the arms that you wanted to be available because they had pitched a bunch. And, they go into the extra innings. They're using Chris Flexen. They come out with a win. I didn't expect that from Chris Flexen when they signed him. I made a Blue Sky tweet that suggested I was not a big fan of him right away. And I didn't believe in him. And I was wrong. He's been very good. His slider has been better than I thought it would be. He's made some changes. They flattened his arm angle out just a little bit, and it seems to have made a world of difference. So I did want to give some Chris Flexen love, but it's great to see the pitching staff carry the hitting. I know the general vibe from like a lot of people in the social media world is that the Cubs are like some super special, like inconsistent offense every year, and that but the reality of baseball is that there's no such thing as consistent offense. The Dodgers have had a bad month offensively. Nobody talks about that. But when you're in it from a fandom of your team, it seems like everybody else is consistent and you're the only non-consistent ones. The reality is the only thing consistent in baseball is that it's inconsistent. So I don't think the Cubs are like special in that regard. They'll figure it out again. They've had a tough run of pitching. They've got a tough run of pitching coming up against them this week.
Yes.
Though actually one I do think kind of favors them a little bit in one respect. So, but no, I love to see the pitching has come around, and hopefully the offense can start to figure it out too. One of the things that kind of happens is the more that it struggles, the closer you are to the breakout. So I know it hasn't been great lately, but they'll break out of here soon, and they're gonna have a big game shortly. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, the last name I did want to mention, you brought his name up earlier. When you talk about pitching, winning the weekend for the Cubs, Matthew Boyd. I just thought it was so cool, Jason, how they win his start 2-1. I believe he got the decision in that game. I'm pretty sure he did. But regardless of that, first inning, he gives up a home run to Andrew McCutchen. You're like, oh, because Matthew Boyd's just been rock solid all year. And you give up an early homer like that, and you're like, oh, maybe this will be a start. Because I think outside of like a start in Cincinnati in the latter parts of May where Boyd struggled a little bit, he's been the model of consistency. Like, you're getting probably 6 innings, a quality start. He's going to limit the damage immensely. And he gives up that home run in the first inning to McCutchen on Saturday, I want to say it was. And that was the only hit he allowed. 6 innings, 1 hit. It was the home run in the first inning. Cubs win 2-1. Matthew Boyd, I don't know if you saw him talking to reporters after the game. He had a really, really cool quote. He was asked about his start, like in general, just like the start against the Pirates. And he brought up Wrigley Field. And he brought up how special it is. And he said every outing he has at Wrigley Field when he's on the mound has felt like a playoff environment this year. And I just thought that was so damn cool for him to say. And he has been just sensational for the Cubs. Like, they've gotten more than what you could have expected up to this point. And I know the injuries with him are always kind of the underlying worry, the things that linger in your mind if you're a front office that takes on a Matthew Boyd, but it's not like you're breaking the bank to bring him in anyways. And he has been phenomenal for the Cubs. And, amongst all the, and I love you bringing up Flexen. We talked about Cade Horton.
Mm-hmm.
We have to continue to put some shine on Matthew Boyd, because again, he gives up that home run in the first inning to McCutchen. And for him, it could even be like, like what's that? And then that's the only hit he gives up. 6 innings, 1 hit. Cubs win 2-1. So I think Matthew Boyd's just been absolutely sensational. Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
Last topic point, Cubs-Brewers. We don't always talk about, preview a series, but when it's Chicago-Milwaukee, we have to. We'd be doing a disservice to the listener if we didn't talk Cubs-Brewers. Pitching probables, again, we're recording Tuesday for a Wednesday. Pitching probables are Brown, Patrick, Tyon, Mizorowski. Oh my gosh. And then Horton, Peralta. Also, with Horton, you had a Friday game at Wrigley last Friday. Standalone game, right? 1:20. No one else is playing. Friday afternoon. If people are tuning into baseball, last Friday afternoon is to watch Cubs Pirates. And it's Horton against Skeens.
Yeah, awesome.
Like, the juices had to be flowing a little bit there,
Yeah.
the adrenaline, maybe a little bit of butterflies in the stomach for Cade Horton. And Paul Skeens did what Paul Skeens does. But for Cade Horton to come out there and shove for 5 2/3, I mean, that on that platform, standalone game, Friday afternoon at Wrigley, 1:20, get the weekend started. It was awesome from Cade Horton. And then you have Cade Horton, Peralta, as I mentioned, are the pitching probables to finish up that series between Chicago and Milwaukee. I will note, for my previous job that I held for a few years, in season every Thursday, I had to do a Brewers minor league report because I was with FanDuel Sports Network. And obviously they carry the Brewers. So I had to do a minor league report for the website every Thursday. Cannot tell you how hard it was to not put Mizorowski in every single week. Like, you're talking about an arm of the minors, and every week I'm looking at his data, looking at his numbers, and this dude's just registering 100 miles per hour on the gun as a starting pitcher. He was phenomenal in his major league debut last week, and then he rolled his ankle coming off the mound after a pitch and left, but he was as good as advertised. I'm glad the Cubs are seeing him, just because I want to see this Cubs offense that, was kind of quiet against Pittsburgh despite taking 3 out of 4, and you feel like they're going to have an outburst soon based off the numbers we've seen this year. I'm glad the Cubs will see Mizorowski. I'm just fascinated to see that chess match between young rookie pitcher in his second start against this Cubs offense. And then I mentioned Horton Peralta. What are you looking forward to in this series, and maybe a couple things that stand out?
So Horton Peralta was the thing that I was holding back on. And the reason I'm holding back on is because as I was looking at Cade Horton's StatCast page, just kind of looking at things, the pitcher that he most compares to with, like, because StatCast has this like comparison, it's Freddie Peralta. So Fastball Freddie and Cade Horton, it's the number one comparison between Cade Horton's 2025 data and his closest pitcher match is Freddie Peralta, and they're going toe-to-toe on Thursday. I'm very excited about that matchup. I think that's going to be a great one. That's going to, I think, judging based on, just being realistic, it's probably going to be a series decider. I think Cubs-Brewers is probably going to go 1-1 to that. You're going to want to win that one. I know the Cubs are 5.5 games up in the division. Last time I looked, I think they're still 5 and up.
Still 5.5, yeah.
Yeah, 5.5 up. I've had a busy last couple of days, so I haven't had a chance to remind myself of the standings, but 5.5 up. But going into maybe a rubber match in the series, or a series sweep, or maybe even a series like, hopefully not avoiding a sweep. But I think that's going to be a great matchup at Wrigley. Getting those two guys together, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. If you want a positive about going into the series with Mizorowski, with Fastball Freddie, is that the Cubs are the third best team in baseball against the fastball. They hit fastballs really well. So you got a bunch of fastball guys and a Cubs offense that's kind of geared up towards the fastball. If you want to break out against a good team, you're gonna see the offense break out. This is kind of set up for that. And I don't know what the weather's going to be like. I haven't really paid attention to that either. But if you get the wind blowing out a little bit, you get fastballs. The Cubs, you could see on Sunday against the Pirates, they sat Matt Shaw, they sat Kyle Tucker. They gave these guys an extra day of break. PCA took a break recently too. I have a feeling that they're kind of resting up for this series. And if you get the wind blowing out, you get a lot of fastballs. This could be a really good series for the Cubs offense to kind of take that big breath again. And they might need it. I like Jameson Taillon. He's looked really good this year, but he's given up some home runs. But I'm excited for it. Ben Brown going tonight. You guys will be listening to this Wednesday, so you know how it goes. Yeah. But I'm excited to see him again. I know he kind of struggled the last one, so hopefully he can kind of get it back under him. But I'm really excited about it. I think it'll be a good series. I do strangely just feel confident about the division right now. I think Fangraphs has this like a 97% chance to make the playoffs right now. Obviously that can change in a week. So, don't coast it out. Don't think that I think it's over, but I feel comfortable right now where, like, even if they lost 2-3 the Brewers, I'm not going to panic. I think we're well past panic. This is a great team. Even if they drop a series or a couple series, it's still a really good team, but I've got my fingers crossed. I don't know how you feeling about the series, Mitch. You think they got some wins in them?
Yeah, hoping for 2 out of 3, right? That's what you hope for. Brewers are good. That's why I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I hope they sweep. I think they should sweep. Milwaukee just took 3 of 4 from St. Louis, leapfrogged the Cardinals in the standings. As you said, 5.5 behind the Cubs. It's just one of those where it's like, hey, it's another big series against Milwaukee, so you better show up ready. I do like that Craig Counsell was able to sprinkle in a couple of rest days there for PCA, for Tucker, for Shaw, kind of, maybe foreshadowing what lies ahead with this stretch that starts with this series against Milwaukee in a 3-game stretch at Wrigley Field. I don't know if you did you catch any of the Wilson Contreras Milwaukee Brewers stuff from the weekend? Because it was
I did not see that.
Yeah, it was pretty entertaining. Wilson Contreras hit a home run for the Cardinals, stared down the Brewers dugout, just stared at him as he was rounding the bases, and then later on got hit by a pitch, obviously maybe some intent, and then he and Rhys Hoskins were barking back and forth while Hoskins was in the dugout, and Wilson, I got to pull it up because I don't want to misquote him, but Wilson Contreras said something about certain player, he's talking about Rhys Hoskins, and he said something like certain player on their team would never say it to my face. So it was just, it was one of those fun series. I watched a couple of
baseball
of the
beefs
games.
are some of the best.
Yeah. And you talk about Rhys Hoskins and Wilson Contreras. I mean, we saw it when Wilson Contreras was on the north side for years. Neither of those guys are shy about, using words and barking loudly
or celebrating. Like I distinctly remember Rhys Hoskins like throwing his bat down in the playoffs after he hit that massive home run a couple years ago. So I love baseball beefs. They're my favorite.
They're awesome.
Most of the time they're complaining about things that aren't even rules that they just kind of made up. I'm always pro baseball beef. Because it's always like, oh, you didn't follow this rule that isn't written down.
Yeah.
All right, man. It's like, cool.
There was a play at first base. Wilson was playing first base, and ground ball, they recorded the out, and Wilson kind of like scooted back into the runner, and the runner ran right into him. I think it was Durbin for the Brewers, and that kind of sparked a lot of like, what the hell are you doing from the Brewers dugout towards Wilson Contreras. And the quote from Wilson Contreras after the game was, this is Wilson Contreras, one of their players, he liked to talk from far away, but then when he got in my face, he didn't say shit. I was looking for more than that. He seems to be tougher. And then he goes on to say stuff that I can't say on here. And then he finishes by saying, I'm not going to name names. He knows who he is. And it was clearly Rhys Hoskins.
Right.
So, man, Brewers are coming off a fun series for them where there was a lot of anger between the two sides with them in St. Louis. Maybe they're a little gassed after taking 3 or 4 from the Cardinals.
Take that.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. Cubs-Brewers starts on, again, we're recording Tuesday for a Wednesday publish. Ben Brown gets the nod on Tuesday for the Cubs, Tyon on Wednesday, and then I agree with you that, I'm excited to see the Cubs bats against Mizorowski, but if you want to talk about out of that 3-game set, which the most exciting pitching matchup it has to be Cade Horton and Freddie Peralta, especially with that fun fact you threw in about Cade Horton's most comparable being fastball Freddie. That's wildly interesting. Do you agree with that so far, that comparison?
Yeah, you forget about fastball Freddie a lot of the times. But yeah, it really is. I will say this, and I think part of this is because StatCast doesn't know that Cade Horton is not really throwing a curveball a lot of the times. They kind of mess up his sweeper and his curveball, and it's really kind of just like 2 versions of a slider most of the time. I think if you ask Cade Horton that, he would tell you that really what he throws is kind of a more of a gyro spin slider, which has that kind of north-south movement. And then he does have a sweepery slider, which has more of that horizontal break. So I think part of that's going with it. But somebody who throws a fastball a lot at a pretty good velocity, he throws a lot of strikes in that mold. I think they're very similar when you think of, I've kind of mentioned him as like Dylan Cease who throws strikes. But I guess if you take a few seconds back and you're like, all right, well, who's Dylan Cease who throws strikes? More strikes than Dylan Cease. Fastball Freddie. It's really what it is. Cade Horton is very similar to Freddie Peralta, and I hadn't really thought about that, but I think slightly different breaking balls, but generally speaking, the way that they kind of go about the game, where they kind of bully you with fastballs in the strike zone and they don't walk people. Yeah, that actually seems pretty similar to it. Peralta walks a little bit more, I think, than Cade Horton, but yeah, I thought it was an interesting comparison. I think it's going to be a fun game on Thursday. That's, like I said, that was the one I really circled once I looked at the probable pitchers, and I was like, yeah, I find that interesting.
Yeah, I'm right. Thursday is Cade Horton and Freddie Peralta. We'll be back next week, hopefully recapping another successful week that was for the Chicago Cubs that hopefully starts with a series win at Wrigley Field against the Milwaukee Brewers. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Whitmire. This has been the Northside Baseball Podcast. We'll see you next week.